The movie opens with an eerie view of a town's beautiful scenery accentuated by the falling rain. The camera then falls on a secluded house, its white building making it seem very hospital-like. Inside the house, a woman is staring outside the screen door, then grabs her car keys and heads outside. Going over to the local butchery, she hands the clerk a brown paper bag and he asks her if she is okay, as she seems disturbed by something. Grabbing her groceries, the woman begins to head to her car, stopping to see a missing persons flyer of a woman. Suddenly, the woman begins to bleed from her mouth until she starts choking and falls, hitting her head on a steel pole and drowning in a water-filled ditch. Back at the White House, sisters Rose and Iris are handing their younger brother Rory a glass of milk, telling him that they can't give him anything to eat as it is their fasting period. Suddenly, the two girls see a police car arriving at their property and rush out to where their father is speaking to the officer. After a brief interaction, their father, Frank, gets the devastating news that his wife is dead and is helped back to the house by his daughters. Too engulfed by grief, Frank sends his two daughters to see Dr. Bauer to identify their mother's body. When the doctor tells them he only needs one of them to do it, Iris, as the older sister, takes the lead and follows him to a different room. During the autopsy, Dr. Bauer discovers that their mother had an early sighting of Parkinson's disease. After they return home, Rose asks her father about their sacred ritual, and he informs her that they would continue without interruption. Looking at Iris, he tells them that it is her responsibility as the oldest daughter, as was their tradition. In a flashback, we see Frank driving down the empty road when he sees a young woman whose car has broken down and abducts her. The following day, in the town's police station, two concerned parents are sitting in front of the sheriff and worriedly telling him that they haven't heard from their daughter who hadn't come home the previous night. Mentioning the storm, Sheriff Meeks tries to explain to them that it was fairly normal for a person to not be able to make contact due to the lack of phone service, but decides to issue a missing persons report and flyers to make the parents feel better. Out in the town, Dr. Bauer is on a walk with his dog and is surprised when his pet finds a bone down by the creek. Returning home, the doctor calls the sheriff and leaves him a message, informing him that he has found something strange and asking him to call him back as soon as possible. Back at Parker's residence, Frank is speaking to their next-door neighbor, Marge, and thanks her for helping him when he broke down the previous night. Handing her an ornament, he tells her it was a little gesture of gratitude. He then asks her to watch over his young son while he and his daughters go to his wife's funeral, as he doesn't want him to see what is happening. In the back of the house, Rose and Iris are having a conversation about the upcoming ritual. Iris attempts to calm Rose down by telling her it is her responsibility now. When Rose suggests they refuse to do what their father was asking of them, Iris explains that she wants to get it over with so they have a whole year to plan something. In the back of the house, Rory is playing around the shed and begins to hear something coming from inside. Slowly walking inside, he opens the door his father had warned him never to go through and is startled when he hears a woman crying behind a locked door, reaching out to him for help. Startled, he runs outside and runs into his father, who yells at him, telling him that he was not allowed there. Calming his son down, Frank carries Rory and takes him out of the shed. After attending the funeral, the family returns home and Frank shakily gets out of the car, giving Iris an old journal wrapped in a white cloth. That night, Rose is braiding Iris's hair while she reads the old journal. Suddenly, a knock is heard on the front door, and Iris goes to answer it, surprised to see Deputy Anders. After saying his condolences, Anders shows her a picture of a missing person they knew from school and asks her if she has seen her around. Mentioning that she hasn't seen the girl, Iris tells him to check with the people living in the trailer park up the street. Just before leaving, Anders awkwardly asks Iris out on a date, but she refuses, telling him to ask her on a different day. Up in her room, Rose continues to read the old journal talking about the family who first arrived at the land, written from the perspective of the daughter. During a heavy winter, they are unable to find any food, forcing her father and uncle to go looking for something to hunt. Days later, her father returned with fresh meat and told his family that his brother had continued to find more food, but she knew it was a lie, knowing that what they were consuming was his flesh. After her conversation with Anders, Iris goes to speak to her father about stopping their traditional practices, asking him to let them be normal. telling her that it was God's will. Frank urges his daughter to be strong, telling her only a day was left until the ritual. Meanwhile, Dr. Bauer heads over to Sheriff Meek's house and shows him the bone, telling him that he believes it is human. Assuming the old man was being paranoid because his daughter had recently vanished, Meek tells Bauer to stop overthinking, urging him to take a vacation. Unwilling to let it go, Bauer contacts Anders the following day and shows him what he has found. Although Anders feels like the old man is grabbing at straws, he sees that Bauer is agitated and offers to come over to his house so he can show him where he found the bone. Back at the Parker residence, Iris and Rose are worried about their younger brother and rush to their neighbor Marge to ask for help. After she comes over to check on him, she informs them that the boy simply has a small fever and should be all right. While Frank is walking her out, Marge suggests they take the child to the hospital, but Frank brushes off the idea, telling her they didn't have the money and that the boy should be fine. As soon as he closes the door, Frank collapses on the chair beside him and tells Iris that it's time. The scene changes, and we are taken to centuries back as the girl from the journal narrates the story of the beginning of their strange ritual. After their father had provided them with their first batch of meat, he started to go insane, hiding out in the caves and coding scripture. Once their mother dies, their father reveals that he has been feeding them human flesh and entrusts their survival to his oldest daughter, having her carve up their mother so they can eat her. After the reports are received by Bauer, Anders and other police officers head down to the overflowing creek and are shocked to find the dead body of the recently missing girl. The police dread the news they have to give the girl's parents. Back in the Parker household, Iris takes Rose down to the basement to perform the planned ritual. Opening the locked door, they find the girl their father had kidnapped in chains and pull her out. Although reluctant to do it, Iris takes charge and bashes the girl's head in. Once the woman is dead, Iris and Rose clean up the woman and begin to delicately carve her up as per the instructions in the book. After they had completed the task, the girls were shaken by what they had to do, traumatized by the tradition forced upon them. The two sisters decide that they would never perform the ritual again, even if their father forced it upon them. After cooking the woman they had carved up into a stew and served it up as dinner for the family. Remembering what they had done to the woman, Rose has a hard time eating the food, but Frank forces her. The following morning, Rose hurriedly wakes Iris up from sleep and shows her Anders searching up and down the creek. Hoping to distract him from his search and seeing his wet shoes, Iris calls him into the house, offering to give him her father's spare sock. When she asks him what he is searching for, he explains that the flood has swept some bones down the street, telling her that the doctor thinks it might be human. The announcement scares Iris, fearing that their secret might be discovered, and tells Anders that there was an old cemetery down the road, mentioning that the bones might be from their old relatives. Fascinated by the discovery of more small bones and tissue, Dr. Bauer launches into more research and realizes that he has diagnosed Iris's mother wrong, finding out that she had Kuru disease, which came about from cannibalism. Out in the woods, Anders confesses his feelings for Iris, and the two begin to kiss passionately. The two fall on the ground and begin making love when suddenly, Frank appears out of nowhere and bashes Anders's head with a shovel. Ordering his daughter to return home, Frank buries Anders's body and burns his clothes. Iris is devastated about what happened, and she cries in her sister's arms as she consoles her. Angered by his daughters, Frank goes outside and begins to yell out scripture while hacking at a fallen tree when he notices human bones floating inside the creek. Frank attempts to save as many of them as he can, but realizes it is too many to collect. Realizing there is something very strange with the Parker family, Bauer goes to the station to find Anders since he is unable to reach him through his phone, and is disappointed when the secretary tells him the deputy hasn't been in yet. After asking for Meek and finding out he was out on a call, Bauer goes into the sheriff's office by saying he had forgotten something inside and stole the officer's gun from the drawer. Leaving his dog with the secretary, Bauer heads out into town searching for Anders among the festival goers. Meanwhile, in the Parker residence, Frank dresses up in his suit and has a long prayer. He then goes over to his children's room and informs them that dinner is ready. While pouring the stew into a bowl, Frank hears Anders's phone and sees the message sent by Bauer informing the deputy of his suspicions of the Parkers and that he was on his way to their residence. Realizing that their secret is soon going to be discovered, Frank adds arsenic to the stew, planning to end himself and his entire family. While bringing the bread to the table, Rose notices the jar of poison and realizes what their father is planning for them. After their prayer, Rory tries to put a spoonful of the stew in his mouth, but Rose slaps the food away from him. Before her father could say anything, they heard someone knock at the front door and realized the doctor had arrived for a visit. When Bauer tells Frank that his situation is a bit sensitive, Frank has his children go up to their rooms. Once they're alone, Bauer explains that Frank's wife suffered from a disease that comes from eating human flesh and raises his gun at him when he attempts to get up from his seat. Bauer then continues to confront Frank, telling him that he has noticed Iris wearing the same hair ornament as his daughter. Realizing that he needs to quickly get things under control, Frank attempts to shoot Bauer but hurts Iris instead when she tries to save the older man's life. While Bauer attempts to help Iris, Frank sneaks up on him and hits him over the head with a pan. When they hear gunshots, Rose takes her younger brother and rushes over to Marge's house. Soon after, Frank arrives at the house, attacking Marge and murdering her before convincing his children to return to the house. He then serves them the food and tries to get his children to eat it. But before he could make them, Rose and Iris attacked him and began to rip him apart with their teeth, eating him alive. After they had murdered their father, the two girls grabbed their younger brother and fled the town, hoping to start a new life away from the horrible things they had experienced. Did this story spook you out? Let us know in the comments below. For more horror movie recaps, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in the next one. Fear awaits you.